Hi, I'm Clifford from TopGear Singapore, and we are here today at the Art Science Museum for the Audi House of Progress. And our guests today, we have two people from Audi itself. We have Mark Andreas here, who is the Director of Experiential Marketing. And then we have Marcus Schuster, the Managing Director of Audi, who recently told me that it's not a good idea to retire in Germany with us. So, true story. So, I got to ask this question, and I think I could direct this to you first, Marcus. And the question would be, with the future being electric, what could you tell us, about it? What could you tell us that are the key differences that would set Audi apart from the rest of the competition?
Yeah. So I think for us at Audi, the electrification has been a long journey already, right? And for us, our core values are always also in our slogan, Vorsprung durch Technik, so advancement and the future through technology.
Yes.
And I think this is what sets us apart as a brand from other brands. We always try to be really at the edge and the forefront of technological development. On the other hand, you also will know over the years that for us design is a very crucial element of our cars. So we really go into every detail of the car to make it perfect, and we want to have the perfect product always for our customers. And that is not only in the shape but also in the experience and the driving experience that the customer has. And we've had all these principles over years, and we're trying to translate them into the new electric era now with all the e-tron models that we launched. So in Singapore we launched the e-tron SUV and Sportback first, and launched our flagship at the moment, the e-tron GT and the RS e-tron GT last year. And we will be bringing new models into the market this year, which is the Q8 e-tron, and then also a model that you can see for the first time here in Singapore, which is the Q4 e-tron, which embody all these values and all these virtues of Audi.
As we progress, right, cars actually are becoming a little more, there's this danger that cars become more common, because, electrification is quite, it kind of closes the gap, for certain companies. So the other question I'd like to ask also about, since we are talking about sustainability, which is really a big word right now, and it comes, sustainability comes with the word electrification, of course, and it also comes with the word the future, Mm-hmm. And so with that, right, when we're speaking about the future, what happens when, the car reaches the end of its life, especially in a country like Singapore? How does recycling a car, or how does taking a car apart happen in outside of Europe?
Yeah, it's a very important question, because if you look at sustainability and the footprint that we leave by producing and running a car, it's too short to look at just the using phase. You have to look into the whole value chain, and you have to reduce the impact, the environmental impact, also already at the beginning in the production. So we're talking a lot about circular economy, where you look into possibilities to recycle materials that you take from cars. And I think the best example, and an example which has huge potential, is the reuse of batteries from battery electric vehicles, right? So what we do at Audi, we're already now looking into different opportunities to use used batteries from our e-trons, for example, for charging solutions. So in our charging hubs, some of them are already up in Germany and in Europe. We use used batteries from Audi e-trons as buffer batteries. So you can trickle charge these batteries, and then you have a high power charge for the e-trons. Another very good example that was projected in India, they use used batteries from e-trons to power electric tuk-tuks.
Oh, I remember this.
And it's something that is very intriguing, because especially in countries where you have a lot of mobility that is not necessarily cars. There is huge potential to drive also electric mobility in these areas if you can reuse batteries. And if you look at other areas in the production, Audi has been since 2017 already recycling a lot of aluminium that we use in the production for the body of the cars. That obviously it saves a lot of material, but it saves also a lot of energy. And this is our approach that we have. We really look into the whole value chain and try to make our factories CO2 neutral. Some of them are already CO2 neutral, and the target is actually to have all our factories CO2 neutral until 2025.
2025.
So that's a big challenge, because you have to really change processes and you have to look into every detail of the production chain, but it's really worth it, because this is where you can really decrease the footprint that you have.
And maybe if I can add on this, it's really, as Marcus said, the overall holistic approach that we have. So starting already in the supply chain, working with more than 14,000 suppliers around the world in more than 60 countries, to also, decarbonize as much as possible in that area before we even get raw materials and other things to put in our cars. Then it's about the production facilities as such. For example, if you buy an RS e-tron GT or e-tron GT today, it will come out of a factory that is already operating CO2 neutral on balance today. Then you can run it, of course, on ideally, let's say,
clean power source, right?
Clean energy, and also then the last stage would be the recycling. You mentioned some examples of battery recycling, but it's even for us the whole car that needs to be recycled in the best possible way. And also elements in the car that are being used that are already coming from recycled and so-called closed loops. So we have it for aluminium. We are on the Q4 e-tron, for example, which is also on display here in the House of Progress. We are also trying now the glass loop. So for example, broken glass from the windshield is being recycled. In former times, it couldn't be reused as a windshield, just as a kind of second quality material. Now we have a process that brings it back into the best possible quality to be able to make another windshield out of it. And this is also a closed loop that we're just working on, and that will be put into series production very soon.
And very apt, because I do have a question for you, because it's about experiences. If you get into a future Audi car, or even a near future Audi car, would you be able to tell if there are any recycled materials in there, just by feeling them or looking at them? Would you know that this is probably recycled, or it comes from or reused in any sense? Would you be able to tell that?
Well, I would say from a customer perspective, you wouldn't literally feel it or
know it, right?
Be able to tell it, simply because we do apply the same high quality standards and premium standards that we would apply for any kind of other material in our products. Because otherwise, it wouldn't be premium. It wouldn't be, let's say, a luxury product anymore.
But it wouldn't be a deliberate thing, right? To tell people that, look, this is, have a statement of the car, like this is.
Well, actually, it becomes more and more important, because also, people outside also our target group, they're looking for those arguments, right? I mean, the reason why people buy a super sports car, which is completely electric, is also because they say, I want to run it, completely, let's say, energy neutral or CO2 neutral. And the same applies to materials. So if you would tell people that, for example, in the e-tron GT, the floor mats, etc., or part of the upholstery is done out of fishing nets, old fishing nets, or other plastic that is being recycled out of the ocean, etc. Some people might find that strange in the first moment, but actually, as I said, the same quality standards do apply. And we can feel and see that a lot of people actually do appreciate that, because it gives also a positive
message, just a message, right?
A positive message, yeah.
So I think I gotta ask Marcus this one. So Audi definitely has its eye on the future. Electric is the next phase, or it's really the phase that's coming in. But I can't help looking at the past. So I am a very big fan, specifically a very, very big fan of the group's 1.5 liter mild hybrid engine. It's very specific because it's got mild hybrid technology. It's got a cylinder deactivation, all these lovely little things that really makes it efficient. So I know it's coming to an end, but will Audi still be investing in any engine tech? Just for this short to mid term, will there be any more investments in it?
I mean, on one hand, we have a very clear strategy. So we want to bring Audi into a completely electrified future. On the other hand, you also have to consider that ICEs will still be, so internal combustion engine cars, will still be around for a considerable time, right? So in order to improve or to lower the environmental impact that our products have, you still have to keep improving also the internal combustion engine cars that we have. And I think that is very important, because there you have a lot of leverage still. And what we're doing is, while we are developing all these new electric products, we still invest a lot in the internal combustion engine cars and in these technologies to really improve them and to get the last bit out of them. Because it's something at the moment in Singapore, for example, the battery electric share in the premium market is around 18-20%. So that means still 80% of the cars that are sold are internal combustion engine cars. So you still have to invest in these technologies, which is great, because if you buy an internal combustion engine car at the moment, you really get a technology that has been growing over more than 100 years, and you really get a super high quality technological car.
I think that's really lovely, because at TopGear we are petrol heads, you see. So I got really worried when the electric wave started kicking in. I'm not sure who to ask on this one, but previously, the Active Sphere was teased, a car that can do everything. It's a pickup, it's an SUV, it does everything. Really wonderful. Unfortunately, right, in a country like Singapore, there's a space constraint. The cars are prohibitively very, very expensive here. You can't. A person here who buys maybe an Audi Q3 could probably easily afford maybe a Q7 or something overseas. So back to the Active Sphere, right? It's really an exciting car. There's so many things that it can do. Would there be a chance that Audi would bring in something, would introduce something down the road that is pint-sized but probably just as exciting?
Well, I think first of all, I mean, the Active Sphere concept, like the Grand Sphere concept that is on display here, and the other show cars, they're first of all a vision of what we see as a development into the future of premium electric mobility. So they're all done in a certain way to show specific characteristics. So the Active Sphere concept that you were mentioning, it's about versatility, and augmented reality, this blending between the real world and the virtual world. Like the Grand Sphere here is for long distance traveling in a kind of luxury lounge environment. So they're not meant as such to be series production cars. But coming back to your question of, will people be able to afford any kind of these products? From my perspective, yes, because all of these elements will inspire, and are already, let's say, in the plans for different series production models that will come to the market in the next years.
Okay.
And our electrification roadmap clearly says that we will launch 20 new electric cars in the next years. And basically we'll be present in every core segment on the market, So it's not just these beautiful show cars that will just remain a vision, but they will be derived in concrete products that will hit the markets in the next years, and that people will be able to afford in different segments.
Okay.
Maybe Clifford, if I can add to that.
Yes.
So we're showing here at the House of Progress for the first time in Southeast Asia the Q4 e-tron, which we will introduce to the Singapore market very soon. And I think this is exactly the car that you are talking about, because it's exactly the right size for Singapore. You talked about the Q3. It's targeted at a similar group of customer. And there you already have all the newest technologies. It's a great car. It's fantastic to drive, and we're very excited to bring this car to Singapore also, because we think it really hits a nerve and it hits the sweet spot for customers in Singapore.
I think I really would love to see something that's exciting in Singapore, especially in a premium sized, something that's premium sized or just a bit junior executive, even me. So correct me if I'm wrong about the Grand Sphere. So the concept behind it is that it's you can drive it on your own, but more primarily it's a car that can be driven autonomously, that can drive itself autonomously. So well, so maybe the two questions would be how close is this realization of autonomous driving at this very moment? Can we say it's here, or is it do we have a few more steps to go before it really happens?
Well, I think there are two main perspectives on this autonomous driving or automated driving. The first one is, of course, technological issues.
Yeah.
On the one hand side, inside the product, so inside the car itself, but also the infrastructure that is needed to make that happen. If you don't have any 5G, etc. coverage, there's no way that even the best possible autonomous car would work. And the second one is all the legislation, so the legal aspects behind, who stays responsible. Is it still the driver, even though he's not actively driving
Correct,
in the moment,
have to
where
change
something
in accordance,
happens?
right?
And this is something that will still take a bit of time. So continuously developing technology in the product, but also the infrastructure around, and also the legal questions that need to be clarified. And obviously, this is a very tricky point.
Yeah.
And also depending on the regions and the markets, this might take more or less time. But I think this is why also the predictions from different brands and technology brands around the globe from years ago, where we felt like maybe mid of the 20s it might be there, and nowadays people are tending to say, okay, it probably will take a little bit more time because it's just such a complex story.
In your opinion, maybe Marcus, in your opinion, how long do you think will it be for Singapore before it happens?
Loaded question. I would need a crystal ball for that. I think Singapore as a market is extremely developed regarding the infrastructure. So I think Singapore will be one of the first markets in the world where you will have autonomous vehicles really running on the road and running safely on the road. I think what is important is that for us it's not so much about will this be in 2026 or 2030. The most important thing is how can we get all the technologies that we develop already in the cars that we are selling now, and to improve all these driver assistance programs that we have and the systems in order to give the benefit of that already to our existing customers now, because every system that makes driving on the road safer and more comfortable is a great system and should be implemented as soon as we have it. And then I think it's an evolutionary process that you will get to a point where then you really can take off the hands of the wheel and say, okay, this is really autonomous driving. But there are going to be a lot of steps going there, which will all be great because it makes the experience for the driver and also the road safety just better over the next years.
And coming from the customer experience, because this Grand Sphere concept and the other concept cars, they have all been defined from the inside out. So you're really thinking from the user's needs and what is the use case, thinking about autonomous driving. So because once we will have the technology, what will actually people do in the car? And this is what we already start of thinking of today to imagine, what could it be? And therefore,
cook lunch.
Like I said, it's a digital holistic ecosystem that is behind, because once you will not be actively driving anymore, this gives you a lot of freedom a lot of time, to relax, to work, to just enjoy the scenery around you, whatever. It's
a little funny for a small country, but I get what I get where you're going. I guess in Singapore, most of us will probably be driven to work. We'll just be doing that, especially guys in sales, right? Okay, so I mean, I think I should round this up. Maybe for a last statement, right, to our viewers here. What can you tell the Singapore audience? That's in Audi's very next lap coming up ahead.
So for us, our focus is really to roll out the whole e-tron range for Singapore. So to have an offering, a product offering in every price range for every kind of customer that we have, so that we can really electrify the Audi brand here on a large scale. And we also want to do this in the whole region. So Singapore is going to be, as it always is, kind of a test bed for the whole region. And so you will see a lot of very exciting products coming from us this year. The QA, then the Q4 e-tron, and there's some very exciting products coming after that.
Can't
also.
tell me yet, right?
And at the same time, we will still not neglect the internal combustion engine, because they're still hugely popular, and we will keep on improving these.
All right. I think that wraps it up. Really, on a it's very important that we look forward to the future. Singapore is a small country, and we are very environmentally conscious here. So it kind of sits very well with what the country stands for. And thank you for joining us this afternoon. It's really been really insightful. Mark, thank you very much. And we'll be signing up from this. And this is Clifford from TopGear. Remember to subscribe and hit the like button.